It's getting kind of late on Saturday night, the day before Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day, everybody! And I'm going to talk about a few coins on this video. One of the ones I want to start with is Bitcoin. And a lot of people have been watching Bitcoin, and we've had pretty dramatic price action. So a peak, and then a couple of troughs, and then a new low, and then we came back up. But I want to share what I did today, or what happened with me today is I actually opened along right here. I saw that it was getting ready to break out around 1730, and I opened along, and I didn't have a lot of conviction in it, so I didn't have a very small stop loss. And then it turned down, and then it came back up. So I longed it here, shorted it here, thinking it was going to crash back down, and then I had no position when it rocketed up. And at that point, I had to go do something, so I walked away from my computer with a minor loss. But what the lesson to learn here is, you really want to have some conviction in your trades. And had I had a little bit larger stop loss, or had I just really done nothing and let the trade play out, I would have been great. Another thing that could have helped me out there that I didn't see at the time was this trend line from this top. This is the trend line, boom, boom, boom. And when it broke this trend line, this is when it really took off. But I was in here, and I just didn't see that trend line at the time. That would have really, really helped me. If I would have seen that trend line, I could have played that as my long instead of this. And, just sharing what I saw. So, always look at the really big picture before you do anything. Right now, I've got, looking at this triangle that broke out, this is a pretty weak triangle. This triangle is a little stronger. And I'm looking at it breaking out right now. So I have a leverage long on this at the moment, seeing how this is going to play out. So that's all I want to say about Bitcoin at the moment. It's been really crazy. It's been a slow day as far as trades. Volume's been pretty low. But everything here still looks pretty bullish. Even though it's had this big run again, it doesn't mean that it can't keep running. So when I saw this pattern, I put in an order, and we'll see where that goes. Okay, let's talk about Ethereum Classic. So this is Ethereum versus Ethereum Classic, which is the pair I like to look at. And as you can see, Ethereum Classic's, down, 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 down. And has bounced off the bottom here and is messing around with some Fibonacci's. This looks like it verifies the fib. Maybe the rest isn't so great. Here's a little bit of resistance. Maybe a little bit here. And we're below the last Fibonacci here. So, if you go back, this is a pretty low point for Ethereum Classic, which I think actually makes it a decent place to get an entry. So Ethereum Classic short term, I would say, because of its price relative to where it's been, because of the price relative to Ethereum, that this might be a place to just put a little bit of Bitcoin into it and let it sit and see if you can get another nice run up. So that's my thought on Ethereum Classic. Dash. Let's talk about Dash. So Dash was a Eiffel Tower, a little bit of a bounce, come back. I had a short way back here that didn't play out very well for me. But now we're right back at this resistance level. Right back at this level where we had resistance, and then we had really strong support with this big wick, and then we bounced off of support here, and now we're right back at the same place. We're also looking at a GAN fan, which has a little bit of validity as far as this being resistance. So it's in between resistance and very strong support, which makes it kind of interesting. You could trade this range and see if it's going to have a big move. I don't think investing a lot of money in altcoins at this moment is so great, considering what Bitcoin potentially could be doing in the next day or two. But it is, when Bitcoin is a good place, a good time to look at alts is when nobody's looking at alts. So that's why I looked at alts today. So thoughts on Dash. I don't really like the coin itself, but technically it's in between very strong support and I would say moderate resistance. So likely I would say it might go up. Let's take a look at Monero. So Monero had a pretty strong downtrend, just like we showed Bitcoin. And then once it broke it, It's now bounced around. It's kind of back to where it broke the trend. So it's been pretty much, even though it's had some big price swings, flat, overall. But it's on what I would say is, minor support. Not too far underneath the Fibonacci. I don't think this is, Monero could go a lot lower, and it's been the hardest coin to predict. But if you wanted to build a little bit of a Monero bag, if you like Monero, if you wanted to add some to what you already have, this might not be the worst entry. That's just my thoughts on Monero. Not much more I want to say about that. Let's talk about Decred. So you'll notice that several of these coins have a big peak at relatively the same time frame, and then some lower highs. And Decred just punched above this briefly. It's in between this line and its fib. If we can get like a full candle close above this, then I would say it's probably going to reach for 0.014. So if we can get a line, if we can get a full candle above this line, a full close, then that might be a place to open, tight stop, at least revisit this, if not back up to 0.014. I've held Decred in the past, and I might hold it again. I don't have any at the moment, but I kind of like how that looks. If it can stay above this line, I say that might be a buy. Ripple. So I don't even know if Ripple's really an altcoin, to tell the truth. I don't follow it closely enough to know all the details of it. But the only thing I will say about Ripple is it's got a strong uptrend. So it had this peak. You could say this is a 1, 2, 3 correction. It could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not a big Elliott wave person, but that's potentially what's on this chart. It has a very steep uptrend, but an uptrend's an uptrend in between Fibonacci's. I wouldn't look to put a lot of money into it, but if you're looking for something that could run, that has some trend, you don't mind having a little bit of a stop loss, Ripple might be a place to put a little bit of money. And then let's talk about Ardor. So I think this GAN fan lines up pretty well, especially the early portion. It definitely, obeyed on this support line very well. There's some bounces and touches. I think this all lines up, supports the theory that this GAN fan's valid. And then now it's just up in the middle of nowhere. So, I don't know if it can run to touch this other line. It definitely hasn't since way back here. But it's also only 4,600 Satoshi. And if it were to jump up to here, it would only be 6,500. So it's almost a 50% jump. But in the grand scheme, given that what its Satoshi's limit's at, and a little bit I know about it, this might be a dark horse coin to put some spare altcoin money in. I would have liked it a lot more down here, but at least it's in a strong uptrend. You got that going for you, and you know where your support is. So let's see what that is. That's a good 15% that you could potentially put at risk if you were to put a stop here. But those are my thoughts on Ardor. So that's a couple of coins to cover. Bitcoin's real interesting right now. Let's take a look at the live chart. We're still dealing with this symmetrical triangle. Hopefully it'll break out and just run maybe to 1850. And we'll see how that goes. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe, leave a comment. Really appreciate it. Have a great Mother's Day.